All right, and for more on this ongoing issue, let's bring in our border security experts and more Border Commerce and Security Council Chairman and Balido and Associates Principal Nelson Balido, former New York State Homeland Security Advisor, and Redland Security Director Michael Balboni. Also back with us in studio, Tom Del Beccaro. All right, Nelson, I'm going to start with you here. Were you shocked to hear that the appeals court made such a quick turnaround decision after the Supreme Court's ruling? There was a lot of celebrating yesterday afternoon, albeit brief.
Right. So, sure, I was surprised to see it turn so quickly. But honestly, you have three ways to enter our border. One is with the CBP1 app, which is about 1,500 people per day are let in through our ports of entry. The second way is the folks that are seeking asylum that cross over the river or cross into the U.S. territory and turn themselves in. And third are the ones that we call gotaways, where I think SB4 would really is the one that's focused on. These are the ones that have entered illegally, that we don't know who they are. They didn't go through Border Patrol or U.S. Customs, and that's really where SB4 is. And then lastly is, where do you deport them? Mexico has already said yesterday that they're not going to accept anything that the state of Texas brings them over the border. So now you're stuck with people, and how do you house them? Where do you keep them?
Michael, I think what stands out to me is what James said, the tug of war between the Biden administration and the state of Texas. Now, Texas is trying repeatedly to do something about what's happening down there, yet the Biden administration, the DOJ, they continuously step in, file lawsuits, and try and negate the progress that they're trying to make. So the only conclusion that I can possibly come up with at this point is the fact that Joe Biden wants it to continue just as is at the border, and this is what he's happy with.
So this is such an ironic event when you think about it. So here is the White House saying that, no, you can't help yourself, but we're not going to help you either. And then you have his press secretary saying, we're going to come in with all sorts of resources. We're going to make people safer. How? And why haven't you done it yet? Where have you been the last 3 years that you've been in this administration? So when Texas decides to take their own safety of their residents in their own hands, because they have felt the brunt of this more than any other state in the nation, then they say, no, you can't do this. But then don't tell us, well, what will be done? That's really the irony here.
All right, we're going to have to take a quick break because the Fed Chair Jerome Powell is now speaking live in Washington. Let's listen in.
Continued, the risks to achieving our employment and inflation goals are moving into better balance. I will have more to say about monetary policy after briefly reviewing economic developments. Recent indicators suggest that economic activity has been expanding at a solid pace. GDP growth in the fourth quarter of last year came in at 3.2%. For 2023 as a whole, GDP expanded 3.1%, bolstered by strong consumer demand as well as improving supply conditions. Activity in the housing sector was subdued over the past year, largely reflecting high mortgage rates. High interest rates also appear to have weighed on business fixed investment. In our summary of economic projections, committee participants generally expect GDP growth to slow from last year's pace, with a median projection of 2.1% this year and 2% over the next 2 years.
About this.
Okay, welcome back. We're hearing Jerome Powell talk about the decision not to raise interest rates right now. He's saying GDP continues to grow. I don't know if that's necessarily what they want. They want things to cool down a little bit, inflation to come down. That's not the case, so they cannot loosen up interest rates. Okay. Let's get back to it here. Our conversation happening down at the southern border here. Tom Del Beccaro, you're an attorney, so I want to ask you, how in the world does this happen? I think the country's wondering. Well, the Supreme Court made a decision at the southern border. That's the law of the land now, right? Not the case, but there's a little bit of stipulations to it here. Explain.
Well, what the Supreme Court did without giving the reasoning was send it back down saying we're not going to be the ones who stop Texas. So they let Texas, but as Coney Barrett and Kavanaugh said in their concurring opinion, that it is up now to the local judges, in this case the appeals court, to make this decision, and it may wind back up at the Supreme Court.
Is it just going to ping pong back and forth now for the first season? Is this it?
It is bizarre. We don't have an example of this in history so quickly happening, but I would guess that it's going to go back to them at some point, the Supreme Court.
Nelson, got to ask you, we heard what White House Press Secretary Karine Jean-Pierre said about this law. She said specifically it will create chaos and confusion at the border. How could there possibly be more chaos and confusion at the border than there already is?
It's already totally, it's border gone wild as it is right now, and then there's no question about it. It can't get any more crazy than it is. What it does is certainly is giving Texas a tool to do something about it now that the federal government's doing nothing about it. But she's 3.5 years too late, and then she wants to blame it on Republicans for not voting a bill. They can stop this right now if they want to, if they enforce the laws today. They don't have to have a new bill. They don't have to have a new law. They don't have to do anything other than do something today. They decide not to do something today, and that's why you have the problem that you have.
Well, that's just it here. It keeps going on, and it wasn't like this under former President Trump. It happened under President Biden's watch. I sound like a broken record. We say this all the time.
It's true, though. It's true.
Nelson, you just said it. It's the truth. That's what's happening. So, gentlemen, we got to stop it short there. We appreciate you coming on. Tom Del Beccaro, you stick around. You're coming back in just a bit.